All right, so this last week's sermon was the economics of justice. And really, it was all about, is there such a thing as truth and justice? And if so, how does that apply to things? So this week, we actually did two things. We looked at the apologetics that answers some objections about truth, and then we applied it theologically from a Christian biblical worldview perspective. So first, there was the absolute truth and justice section, in which we talked about how Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. So he is the truth, according to that John 14:6 passage. And he claims to be the one truth, the one way, and yet our culture gives us a couple of different ways that people try to wriggle out of there being any truth. We call that relativism. Relativism says that there isn't one truth, but truth is relative to the individual. Everybody can have their own truth. Akin to that is moral relativism, which says that there is no absolute morality or an absolute standard of what is good and evil, but instead each person has their own morality. They can follow their own path, and we shouldn't judge another person for the moral path they choose to follow. So that's moral relativism. So we find that these two things are really self-contradictory. They cannot be held with any sense of logic. So we have those two statements. There is no absolute truth is a statement assuming an absolute truth. And then the second statement, you shouldn't judge someone else's moral choices, is actually a statement assuming that one is morally obligated not to judge. And then we moved on to tie that into economics. And economics is really just a system of buying a good or a service from another person and giving a fair wage to a worker. It's a system of bartering, and it's a system of balances. And so how does that apply to our issues of truth and justice? Well, there's a just price for something, and there's a just way to deal with one another in a society where we're bartering, trading, working, and providing. So along those lines, in Obadiah 15, we see God's very clear sense of justice. As you have done, Obadiah 15 says, it shall be done to you. Your deeds shall return on your own head. So then we see that there's an equal punishment for a wrong. Equivalent justice is the principle there. So principle one, equivalent justice. So when a crime is done, we should have an equal punishment. We've lost our sense of justice in the world, so we as Christians need to understand this in our own hearts and understand it, bring it back, live it. And then also, as we're considering this equivalent justice issue on an economic scale, we want to provide a just amount of work or money to receive a just amount of pay or recompense. And so that economic balance is there. And when we have this second and final, actually, issue of mercy, we see that, yes, we are made to work, we are made to produce, and sometimes, though, we just can't seem to get enough. And people go hungry, people have needs. And so we want to exercise as Christians this mercy toward them so that we actually give them things that they don't have. However, that has to be balanced with justice. So as we're looking at economics in our own lives and in the society at large, we want to consider how we deal with mercy and welfare governmentally. If we have a kid in our basement, it's 30, 40 years old and isn't producing any kind of labor, he was made to do something. He was made to produce. And so we want to encourage that person to actually fulfill God's purposes for their lives. And so we might not give them as much material goods, but the mercy is to enable them to do well. And so on the other side, maybe somebody's just lost a job and they have no way that they can provide for themselves, and they're trying, they want to follow that path of production, then mercy might be given. So as we consider the world around us, our own families, how we deal with one another, truth exists, justice exists. And so we should live in this beautiful balance of the very person of Christ, giving mercy, living justice, and walking humbly with our God.